one, and we are live. Charles!
Hey!
Greetings from Detroit.
Greetings from
You look
Hollywood.
amazing.
Your beanie's sweet.
Is it still raining there?
It stopped for today. It'll start again tonight.
Deluge. Are you seeing any of the flooding there in
I'm right where I am right where I am on Hollywood, right at the foothills of the Hollywood Hills. So I'm technically in the Hollywood Hills neighborhood. I'm designated right just south of Sunset is then part of Hollywood, but this is Hollywood Hills, and the water it comes down off the mountains and the hills and just runs like a river down my street. Wow. It forms a river. I mean, it's crazy.
And are there a ton of mudslides up there in that neighborhood, or
no?
Is it pretty stable right now?
It's pretty stable here. I mean, it's like well manicured because Runyon Canyon is right there. So I don't think there'll be any like mudslides. It's usually over more like in Malibu where the celebrities are and stuff like that. That's a little bit more unstable there.
Yeah.
Because there's good vegetation here. Yeah.
It's just 32, gray, and windy here.
Oh, okay. Great weather.
That's
32. It's nice.
Very dry. My legs.
Oh, really?
My legs are white and ashy.
Good.
We are coming to you live from Detroit and LA, and this is MLK weekend. So Charles and I are just going to read this piece from Dr. King's Beyond Vietnam speech, which was exactly a year before he was assassinated, April 4th, 1967, New York City, Riverside Church. And it was in this sermon that Dr. King just gets lambasted. There are hundreds of media outlets, including the New York Times and the Washington Post, the next day just berate King, calling him anti-American. This is the speech that he comes out publicly for real against the Vietnam War. Again, in 1967, he says, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside, but that will be only an initial act. One day we must come to see that the whole Jericho Road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. That's the real Dr. King right there, Charles.
Yeah, and it makes me think about the Historical Jesus Project, right? So that went for what, 40, 50 years? How long did that last? You tell me.
Yeah, I don't know how long it went. But decades. They kept meeting.
Yeah, they kept meeting.
Big time biblical scholars.
From every single Christian tradition, we're talking Mennonites were there, Coptic Christians were there, right? Isn't that right? I mean, Syriac Christians, I mean, just, every kind of ancient Armenians, you name it. And they
very
met.
Ecumenical.
Yeah, they met and they kept saying, okay, what did he truly say? So on a scholarly level, what did he truly say? What was added later? And the final, when they finally finished it, what, in the late 90s? Is that right?
That sounds right. Maybe early no.
Yeah, somewhere right around there. Late 90s, early 2000s is when they finally finished. And the final conclusion was written by an Irish priest. And he said, let me make it simple for you. He said, the historical Jesus was three things. He was anti-religion, he was anti-empire, and and he was anti, you know, wealth, you know, money. Okay, so he's literally saying this. So King is fully within Christ's teaching. It's hard to say Christian because today Christian means evangelical Christianity means Christian fascism. It means, according to evangelicals' own definition, Satanism. You know, looking out for yourself, being materialistic, right? Not having compassion for all the people that Jesus insisted is non-negotiable. You know, the widows, the orphaned, those in prison, the homeless, right? You look at the cruelty and the cruelty of the justifications. You know, these people, and they're this and they're that. You know, so it's just it's becoming increasingly surreal, or maybe it's always been surreal, that a thing that you propose X and you say X is good, Y is bad, and you're nothing but Y, but you're convinced you're X. I mean, it's surreal, it's bizarre, it's disturbing, it's deranged, it's deluded, it's a lot of bad things, and yet there we are, and in a lot of ways expectedly so, sadly. You remember, you know, I don't know if you remember this. I used to say, I almost want things to get worse so that people will stop thinking I'm crazy. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
And this was during the Obama era, where people are like, "Oh, we're just on a forward progress forward." Yeah, you know, like it's just going to keep getting better. You know, and I was like, "You haven't seen the other shoe drop yet." Now, did I think it was going to be as clownish and buffoonish as Trump and his minions turned out to be? No, of course not. You know, did I predict the Tea Party absurdity? No. I mean, yeah, it's hard to predict that something will be that much of a parody of itself. You know, how do you predict something that deranged, that dark, like dark humor? You know, like it's, you know, that film Idiocracy, where Terry Crews is a professional wrestler and he's the president of the United States, right? You know, he came back and he got dressed up in his old costume from that movie when Trump was running. He's like, oh well, Terry Crews for president. Like, what kind of absurd? Like, why are we in a really ludicrous satire sci-fi right now?
Yeah, and Charles, when I think about you know, the last 5 weeks of Dr. King's life, he was going around the country because the Kerner Commission report had just come out. The Kerner Commission report was issued by President Johnson to study what's up with all the angry Black people in the cities. Why are there riots? Why are there these uprisings in places like Detroit and Newark and Watts? Why is this happening? And so there was a congressional committee that went out and studied this. It was almost all white. There were a couple token Black folks involved, and the commission report came out 5 weeks before King was assassinated. And basically, the commission report said white folks are implicated in what is happening in the ghetto. I mean, they said it boldly like that, and they made these recommendations. Basically, we need to pour billions of dollars into these impoverished inner cities for education, for housing, for jobs, so on and so forth. And of course, what did President Johnson do? What did both political parties do? They've done the exact opposite for the last 55 years. And what King was talking about, he had this stump speech for the last month of his life that was called The Other America. And so just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, for the other America, for Black folks for Native people, for people who are just mired in poverty. Life has been apocalyptic in the American empire for centuries now.
Yeah.
But we have this, what the white Americans call the real America, right? This kind of middle class, wealthy white folks, middle class people America. When is the other foot going to drop? When for you, when you look ahead, I mean, and we've had these conversations before, it's only a matter of time. Capitalism, climate catastrophe, COVID now, just not doing anything what the science or what reason tells us.
So let's backtrack once again to our conversations, over 10 years ago. And I said then, COVID is not a new thing. I said there's going to be superbugs. Okay. That's part of the collapse. That's part of capitalism. It's inevitable that it will happen. The climate that the weather patterns that we're seeing now, et cetera. All of these things, sadly, were too easy to predict. Okay. You could say they were predicted 150 years ago with Marx. It's inherently, Marx basically spelled out the fact that capitalism, because of the way it's structured, because of its nature and its function, is invariably going to sow the seeds of its own demise. Now, what's it going to take? Remember what I said at the time. I said, I agitate, I organize, and I'm an activist so as to prevent this kind of situation. But sadly, I'm going to continue to be ignored, just like every other generation ignored their prophets, right? Those who said, look, we keep along this path, we're doomed as a society, right? That's what the job of the prophet was, right? Which is why you come from the prophetic tradition of Christianity, like Cornel West, who says, hey, America, turn from your sins, otherwise you're doomed, right? You're going to collapse. You're going to be destroyed. Now,
sin is a systemic issue. Turn from your whiteness, turn from your capitalism, turn from your heteropatriarchy, turn from your imperialism.
Yeah, and so exactly. And will that message be heard? No, it's extremely far. It's going the opposite way, right? And it's going the opposite way in an accelerated rate, right? That's why, remember, I made up that term, the hyper real. So we have modernity, we have post-modernity, right? So we're currently in a postmodern era. Even though people can't define it, we are in a postmodern era. Now, when that exactly started, people debate, but regardless, we are in a postmodern era. And now I've suggested my new term is the hypermodern moment. It's not even a real word because it's characterized by absurdity. Postmodernism was characterized by contradiction. My argument is hypermodernity is characterized by absurdity, crassness, buffoonery, jackassery, okay, idiocy, right? And we can expect it to be exponential. Why? Because capitalism is exponential. Climate change is exponential. CO2 rise is exponential. War is exponential. Okay, all of the rate of change, right? It's not linear, it's exponential. So the absurdity is getting exponential. People stockpiling guns because they're part of a fascist movement that thinks of itself as the opposite. Right?
Saving
absurd.
America.
I mean, it's absurd. Are you going to be on the right side of history? No, they've chosen to continue in their ancestral tradition of being on the grotesquely wrong side of history, on the Confederate side of history. And I mean, literally still talking about the Confederacy. Just to remind you, the Confederate statues that are being taken down are not from the Civil War era. It's from a period of history historians call the nadir of race relations, the 1920s to the 1950s, I think, where people think lynchings was something from the KKK back when. No, it was from the 1920s. the hysterical peak was in the 20s, and the last person to sue for under the 14th Amendment to free slavery was in 1954. 1954, a black man successfully went to the Supreme Court and argued, I am a slave, and that's illegal. 1954.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So, if you're in your homogenized, privileged little suburb, which itself was constructed, there is a reason why you've been sequestered from the harsh and brutal realities of life. And now we can go back to your previous point about the Keener, was it a Keener report or commission?
Kerner, yeah.
Kerner. Now, what's interesting is, if you'll remember, Abby Hoffman broke into the offices of the FBI and liberated files, right? He broke into the offices of HUD and liberated files, which was, the original version of Assange, right? Just taking classified documents. And he put out these HUD documents, okay? And in them, they said, the inner cities, the ethnic inner cities, burned with the fires of revolution. Okay. So what was their plan? Was it the Kerner recommendations? No. They called it visual. It was called spatial. Oh, God. Now I'm blanking on it all of a sudden. It was called spatial
Going to come back.
Depopulation. Something like that. Spatial depopulation. The idea was they've got to decimate the inner cities, destroy those neighborhoods, white flight, redlining. If you don't know what those are, you don't know anything. You have no right to pretend like you have a public opinion about politics or history or America at all if you don't know those important decades-long concepts to specifically create exactly the unequal society we have today. If you're going to pretend, just because you listen to Fox News, that you have something to say, but you don't know those terribly fundamental facts of how we've got to where we are, shut up, and for your own sake, stop embarrassing yourself.
Yeah. Spiritually and emotionally, and one of the things that you and I have talked about wanting to do on this pod is just kind of check in with what's going on in life. One of my desolations in the last week has been there's been a loneliness, an isolation, a kind of just feeling like I'm an alien, particularly around COVID. The long COVID epidemic, where we now catch this virus multiple times and it's just doing all of this damage to our bodies, and really I'm just kind of watching folks on the left unmasked indoors, large crowds. It's hard to watch that, and again, like spiritually, emotionally, for me, I'm wrestling with the kind of judgmentalism, feeling self-righteous, this kind of rage and resentment that wells up. And I understand that some of that is healthy, it's appropriate, but that's a struggle for me, and also part of that is the lack of community. It is just the nature of being more isolated in this era, feeling like I'm on an island in the midst of all of this, and feeling despair, feeling disempowerment. What are we going to do about all this?
But that's exactly it. That because of ignorance and oppression, right? That we see the world crumbling. We're a part of the few that dare look into the void, that glare deeply into the void. The rest of the world is watching TV, arguing about reality television, sports. hysterically and frantically scrambling for some meaning, and they get it through, again, very superficial things, right? They can debate the horse race if they think they're really tuned in, which is pointless. You know,
the horse race of Democrats versus
Democrats and
Republicans.
Republicans. Yeah, you know, as you noted, you know, the Democrats are the soft imperialists, and Republicans are the hard imperialists. You know, today, the Democrats are the hard imperialists, and the Republicans are pathologically insane. They don't have. I mean, you look at, that's why somebody on Facebook said, if aliens came down today, who would you want speaking on behalf of humanity? And I put down George Santos.
Say more.
Because he's a fucking psycho.
So that'd be
he's
the
deranged. He needs to be the representative of humanity, so that the aliens will say, "Don't you ever fucking leave your planet. You will destabilize your solar system, possibly the whole galaxy. You might destabilize the universe so that it collapses. Stay on your planet.
Yeah.
If you fuck around, we're better off just destroying you so you don't destroy everything." Yeah. I mean, we are a crass creature, okay? Let George Santos and Donald Trump be humanity's representatives. This is all we amount to, okay? Because when push comes to shove and people and humans go under stress, we go into our reptilian brain. It's arrogant, shameless, compulsively, you know, pathological, completely self-serving. I mean, he's brazen. He has no intention whatsoever of standing down, even though the whole world laughs at him and despises him. This is another thing that tell me if you have some on this. Like, so when Al Franken got caught up in the Me Too thing, he resigned, which I wish he hadn't.
Former senator from Minnesota.
Yeah, Al Franken, yeah. Versus, you know, every time a Republican gets caught doing something 10 times worse, I can't think of a single one that's resigned. They just keep going on and on and on. You know, Newt Gingrich, during the Clinton thing, you know, he was sitting there having an affair and demanding that his wife put up with it. I mean, the narcissism that Gingrich had. Again, we have
these guys promoting insurrection. None of them,
you know,
none of them resigned, right? They just double down.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you know, so who should represent humanity? You know, George Santos. What's that? Lauren Boebert or whatever. You know, the OG Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Greene. I mean, these people are, you know, they make Sarah Palin look like a towering intellectual.
Yeah, and so again, to like push on that a little bit. Do you have a I mean, when we look at the planet, 7-8 billion people.
8. It already exceeded 8.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about when we talk about just America, the United States, we're talking about less than 5% of the world's population. And then when we just talk about the split of America, the so-called real Americans versus the other America. So would George Santos be just the representative of the so-called real America? Because again, like for folks living on reservations, for some of the people that I've met here in Detroit, the beauty, the brilliance that obviously it's not in the news. People aren't tapping into any of this wisdom of the other America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it would be a lie to tell aliens that we are Cornel West, right, that we're Ralph Nader, okay, that we're Angela Davis. You know, it's important that you know Noam Chomsky. You know, so
that's not
you know
the route
Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
That's not the route that our culture has gone.
No, that's not the important. Right. That's not the important point. The aliens, when they come down, they need to make a serious assessment of where humanity is at. And it's important that they not think that we live in a society of beautiful poets, you know, of bell hooks, okay, that's what it's not. They are marginalized to the point of being suicidal. Okay, they they are the fringe of the fringe, despised. Like Dr. King. Once Dr. King became relevant, he became despised. Okay, and then you look at someone like George Santos, who's just a total reprobate. I mean, this guy is just absolute scum. He's just an abject degenerate. No consequence. It's no consequence. He's going to have a long career ahead of him. He's despised by even his own party because he's making them look bad. Yeah. They're all telling him, please, you're making us look bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Not going anywhere.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Dr. King, true compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. Do you see any hope that we can get to a place in our culture that restructures?
I mean, obviously, I don't.
Obviously,
I don't. I've been saying that for years. You know that sadly, we're just going to have to collapse. You know, and hopefully sooner than later, so that we can get started rebuilding. You know, the future. Now, I've been wrong, fortunately, every time. That today, the kinds of things that we're talking about, the kinds of things that scare moderate liberals, you know, like they're getting too far left, you know, that was the stuff I was talking about back then. It's out in the big public now. So I would have never predicted that. I was certain that would never become a part of the larger discourse. But people on the left, especially the younger generation, has insisted on it. And so it's out there now. We talk about things like microaggressions. We talk about intersectionality. We talk about, you know, Black Lives Matter, et cetera. We talk about police protection. I mean, all these things, abolition. I never. Yeah, exactly. You know, defund the police, all this kind of stuff. It's right out. I wouldn't have predicted that. So I'm not one to predict because I've become so cynical and jaded. You know, can we build a social? Yeah, I mean, we might. I mean, for one thing, we got a taste of it during COVID, the lockdown. People were like, "Oh, we could just do this. You give everyone a basic minimum income. We can solve homelessness tomorrow."
Yeah.
There's 1.5 million homeless and 16 million empty homes.
Yeah. Yeah. And Charles, you say cynical, jaded, but you're one of the very few people that I know that's out there gathering signatures for the next election, for really important ballot measures and doing all sorts of other work. Say more about that tension that you live in.
Yeah, it's Gramsci's
to go do that.
Yeah, it's Antonini Gramsci. I think I'm mispronouncing his name. Famous guy. His prison diaries. Right, he was put in prison by Mussolini for being an anarcho-communist, and you know, he said, basically, he said, you know, pessimism of the intellect, but optimism of the will. We do it because it's the right thing to do. And we don't do it to win. Okay, we do it because it's the right thing to do. We don't have any other choice but to do it. You can't just cower in the corner or throw up your arms and, you know, we've already lost. But does that mean you give up? Do you quit? Do you curl up? And, you know, we do some of that too. It's that I think it's best to come back to that allegory of there's a huge storm and there's millions of, or you know, thousands and thousands of starfish washed up on the beach. You know, and this little boy is picking up one at a time and throwing it back in the ocean. And finally, this guy's watching this and just thinking, "This is pathetic." You know, he goes up to the kid. He's like, "Kid, what the hell do you think? Look around you. There's thousands. What difference do you think it's going to make?" And the kid picks up another starfish, throws these. I made a difference of this one. Picks up another one, made a difference of this one. Picks it up, made a difference of this one. So it's not about whether it's we don't get to decide what the outcome is going to be. We don't get to decide, who does and doesn't matter. We just do what's in front of us. We do what we can, and then one day be surprised. Like I said, I was part of the anti-globalization movement, we called it at the time, social justice, economic justice. At that time, I thought the revolution was going to happen. They had declared the second intifada, and then all of a sudden Bush came in, and I'm certain, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I think they killed JFK Jr. I think they knew that JFK Jr. would defeat Bush, and that rolled back the clock 20 years. And then when Trump came in, it rolled back the clock even more. So look at NASA. NASA saying, look, we don't have much time left. So go ahead.
Yeah. To your point, the starfish, and there's a wealthy white developer from the suburbs here in Detroit who has already he bought a piece of land less than a mile from where we're living in a black majority neighborhood here in Detroit. He tried to sell it a few years ago for a huge profit, and then held on to it. And so now he has turned it into a concrete crusher facility that is just going to just spew toxins all over this neighborhood. He got rejected for his permit. He has mounds of dirt and concrete and heavy machinery already on this land, fenced with barbed wire and electric voltage, and he's lied on permits. And so there's real organizing around blocking this. He got denied his permit. Now it's up for an appeal for 3 weeks. And so I think about just this small struggle to beat him is going to be a real thing for this neighborhood. To not have those toxins, I think they're called fugitive toxins, that will blow all over the place and increase asthma rates. There's schools, there's churches, there's farms, there's all sorts of residents in this neighborhood. Just to beat him will make a huge difference, obviously, for these residents. But then the other thing for me, to just be part of the campaign, to be a part of this community of people who care.
Yeah.
It does something in my soul. And it's fully worth it. Win or lose.
Right. So that's also a common story. The fact that, people can get to experience their agency, and it just feels better when you are participating in the outcomes that affect your life. And that's fighting against alienation, right? Again, another Marxist concept of alienation, right? So look at the level of alienation that some outsider with money could come in, and it's the idea of property versus possession, right? These are people who live here. This is their community is here. Their lives are here. But he owns a piece of paper that says it's his property. Imagine these Englishmen who came with a piece of paper and told these Native Americans, by the way, we own this. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense to them, and that's why they have that thing of the Black Hills are not for sale. If you want to look up treachery, American treachery, look up the broken treaties throughout the Black Hills thing. It's outrageous, Anytime you discover oil, hey, all bets are off. We're gonna break every, it's gangsterism, as Cornel West puts it. They just have to be gangster. And another big problem with this kind of thing is we on the left are always on our heels. So it's not like we're agitating for some sort of socialist utopia. No, we're just trying to prevent people from killing us. So they're always on the attack. Why are they always on attack? Because that's the logic of capitalism.
Yeah.
Right? Capitalism has to grow, and the rate of growth has to go up. Okay? That's what makes it exponential. That's what hastens the collapse. So, I mean, that's why, yeah, I get bleak. So there's nothing to do but just to do the next possible thing, you know? What's next? Okay, here's something that's right here in our face. Okay, let's fight this fight.
Right. Right.
The problem is it's like the military versus the Peace Corps, right? With the military, there's a logic to it. Okay. With capitalism, there's a logic to the exploitation, to the appropriation, expropriation. But fighting for your life, it's not something that we sit there and our life revolves around. Something that we have to mobilize after the fact, once we're assaulted. That is the problem with humanity. It's something that I don't have the answer to. That those who want to exploit, attack, murder will always be one step ahead. We're busy living our lives, producing value. Okay? And then there are those who are looking to exploit. We'll never be on guard for them. And that's where Confucius, Plato, Augustine, you name it, all of them have very similar, philosophies. Like, how do we build the perfect city, right? And in the end, they're like, because of this problem, you're always going to have people that want to exploit. And all of their solutions were, you have to convert those who want power, who want to exploit. You have to turn them into the defenders of the city.
Yeah. Hey, we got like 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Again, King, Beyond Vietnam, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. Said it 56 years ago. That hasn't changed. Obviously, machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, more than ever, I would argue, more so than when Dr. King said it.
And compare what he says to what people have to say today. It's all watered down. You got people like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, as a young man, was literally around during that time. Okay, even a few years prior, he was in the streets. So Bernie knows, but he also knows that he has to market it differently. He can't speak the way these people in the 60s spoke.
Yeah.
You listen to the watered down, well marketed ways, the politic ways in which he has to say things. We've not come a very far way. Again, in some ways we have, in a lot of ways we haven't. The powers that be have really solidified their control. It's very terrifying, and how close we are to the brink is alarming. And the scientists not telling you the truth, because once again they're sitting there trying to sugarcoat it. Don't want to be alarmist. They're going to be ignored if they tell us the truth, and they're going to be attacked. So they only say the 101% positive stuff. Okay, they will not tell you the 99.9% stuff.
No.
And that 99.9% is we're doomed. We're fucked. It's in full collapse right now. We are in full collapse. If we stop all of the bullshit now, we're still fucked. Remember, COVID is here to stay. It's not going away. It's just going to it's going to be like the flu. It's going to continue to mutate. It's going to continue to change, and a slight mutation can jump it from 1% mortality to 10, 15%. I mean, we're going to see a ludicrous number of people dying, just dropping dead in the street. We have piles of bodies like like out of Monty Python, bring out your dead.
Yeah.
You ready?
The prophetic work. Yeah.
You ready?
Monty Python.
Get ready.
I'm not sure I'm ready, and I feel
none of us are.
I feel a lot of the craziness that you talked about earlier in the broadcast of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it just seems like it doesn't. But I feel 100% what you're saying. That's what I feel like is coming down the pike here, and it's the complete opposite of what the media is saying. Hey, Charles, tomorrow's
that's what makes our struggle so difficult. That the weight of it all, the weight of knowing, is just it makes you miserable. Yeah, go ahead. Tomorrow, what?
Tomorrow's MLK Day. Do you have anything fun planned?
No, I mean, not in particular. But I always make sure I do something for it. I saw this hilarious meme. They're like, if you want to make a white person really uncomfortable, ask them, so how do you plan on celebrating MLK Day this year? Watch them look really uncomfortable, but it's a holiday I've always taken very seriously, that I think it's obscene that we don't take it more seriously. And so, yeah, I mean, if we lived in the same world, we'd also have a Malcolm X Day, and a Stokely Carmichael Day. So
Fannie Lou Hamer Day.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
I take a look at Stokely Carmichael. Later on he changed his name, but Kwame Ture. But take a look at some of the stuff that Stokely Carmichael was saying. Fred Hampton was saying. I mean, you don't hear anyone saying that anymore. It's embarrassing, and that was one of the big things that really kind of when you ask like, what is it that changed? I heard some speeches from the 60s. I was like, you're not even allowed to say this kind of stuff anymore. That's when I became really upset. Think like how far backwards we've gone. But anyway, yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, this is episode 2. We're just getting started, Charles. We're just getting warmed up.
Yeah, let's keep going, and hopefully once we do more. Yeah, let's absolutely. Let's Joe Rogan's in the thousands, so we need to get an audience and get some feedback of things that people want us to go into, questions, concerns, etc. So
yeah. Hey, see you in a few days. I'm gonna shut this thing down.
Okay,
stay on.
Go ahead and exactly. Go ahead and hit end broadcast.